A skull grins lopsidedly at the trio, as if cheerfully inviting them to join it for all eternity.
Looks like we're not the first.
Behind the macabre sight, they could just make out the spike that had pierced their predecessor's head, leaving him dangling until time had let all but the skull drop to the floor in a confused heap.
Did you think we would be? No sorcery here, though. Only crude but sufficient mechanics. Nothing to fear.
Unless it's your head on the next pole.
Fauztin tugs at his thin gray goatee. His slightly slanted eyes close once, as if in acknowledgement to his partner's last statement.
Are you sure there's no sorcery about here, Fauztin? None at all.
You have to ask that, my friend.
Well, we've encountered nothing to prevent us from reaching the main chamber. Why go through all of this trouble of digging this out? Then again, leave it so sparsely defended.
Sparse? I wouldn't call a spider as big as my head nothing.
Norrec ignored
Especially
him.
as it was
it what
on
I
my
think?
head at the time.
Are we too late? Is this Tristram all over again?
Once before, between serving causes as mercenaries, they had hunted for treasure in a small, troubled village called Tristram. Legend had it that, in a lair guarded by fiends, there could be found a treasure so very extraordinary in value it would make kings of those fortunate enough to live to find it. Norrec and his friends had journeyed there, entering the labyrinth in the dead of night, without the knowledge of the local populace.
You don't think there's anything to it? As a child, I had grown up being scared by my elders, with dark tales of Diablo, Baal, and other monsters of the night. All stories designed to make me be good.
Norrec, have you ever seen a demon yourself? Do you know anyone that had?
No. How about you, Fauztin? They do say the Vizharan can summon demons to do their bidding.
If I could do that, do you think I would be scrounging in empty labyrinths and tombs?
And that comment, more than anything else, had convinced Norrec then to chalk the villager's words down as yet another tall tale. In truth, it had not been hard to do. After all, the only thing that had mattered then to the three had been what mattered now. Wealth. Unfortunately, it seemed more and more likely that once again, those riches had eluded them.
I had hoped I was wrong, but now I fear it is so. We are far the first to delve this deep into this place.
Sanctuary, damn it.
The slightly graying fighter swore under his breath. He had served under many a commander in his life, most of them during the Crusades from Westmarch. And from surviving those various campaigns, often by the skin of his teeth, he had come to one conclusion. No one could hope to rise in the world without money. He had made it as far as captain, been broken in rank thrice, then finally retired in disgust after the last debacle. War had been Norrec's life since he had been old enough to raise a sword. Once he had also had something of a family, but they were now as dead as his ideals. He still considered himself a decent man, but decency did not fill one's stomach. There had to be another way, Norrec had decided. And so, with his two comrades, he had gone in search of treasure. Like Sadun, he had his share of scars, but Norrec's visage otherwise resembled more that of a simple farmer. Wide brown eyes, with a broad, open face and a strong jaw, he would have looked more at home behind a hoe. Yet, while that vision occasionally appealed to the sturdy veteran, he knew that he needed the gold to pay for that land. This quest should have led them into riches far beyond his needs, far beyond his dreams. Now, it seemed as if it had all been a waste of time and effort. Again.
We spent months on this particular quest, journeying across the sea to northern Kyrgyzstan, sleeping in the cold and rain, following false trails and empty caves, eating whatever vermin we could find. When other hunting proved scarce, and all because of Norrec. He's the one who had instigated this entire fiasco.
Worse, this quest had actually come about because of a dream concerning a wicked mountain peak bearing some crude resemblance to a dragon's head. Had he dreamt of it only once, perhaps twice, Norrec might have forgotten the image, but over the years, it had repeated itself far too many times. Wherever he had fought, Norrec had watched for the peak, but to no avail. Then, a comrade, later dead, from these chill northern lands had made mention of such a place in passing. Ghosts were said to haunt it, and men who traveled near the mountain often disappeared, or were discovered years later, all flesh stripped from their shattered bones. There and then, Norrec Vizharan had been certain that Destiny had tried to call him here, but if so, why to a tomb already vandalized? The entrance had been well hidden in the rock face, but definitely open to the outside. That should have been his first clue to the truth, yet Norrec had refused to even see the discrepancy. All his hopes, all his promises to his companions.
Damn!
He kicked at the nearest wall, only his sturdy boots saving him from a few broken toes. Norrec threw his sword to the ground, continuing to curse his naivety.
Damn them! There's some new general from Westmarch hiring on mercenaries. They say he's got big ambitions.
No more war. No more trying to die for other people's glory.
At this point, it would be foolish not to go to the central chamber. Perhaps those who were here before us left a few baubles or coins. We did find a few gold coins in Tristram. Certainly it would not hurt to search a little longer, would it, Norrec?
He knew that the Vizharai only sought to assuage his friend's bitter emotions, but still the idea managed to take root in the veteran's mind. All he needed were a few gold coins. He was still young enough to take a bride, begin a new life, maybe even raise a family.
Let's just go.
You've a way with words for one using so few.
And you use so many words for one with so few things worth saying.
The friendly argument between his companions helped settle Norrec's troubled mind. It reminded him of other times when, between the three of them, they had persevered through worse difficulties. Yet the talk died as they approached what surely had to be the last and most significant chamber. Fauztin called a halt, staring briefly at the jewel atop the staff.
Before we proceed inside, the two of you should better light torches.
They had saved the torches for emergencies, the sorcerer's staff serving well until now. Fauztin said no more, but as Norrec used tinder to light his, he wondered if the Vizharai had finally noted sorcery of some significance. If so, then perhaps there still remained some sort of treasure. With his own torch lit, Norrec used it to set Sadun's ablaze. Now surrounded with more secure illumination, the trio set off again.
I swear that the hair on the back of my head stands on ends.
Norrec felt the same. Neither fighter argued when the Vizharai took the lead. The clans of the Far East had long studied the magical arts, and Faustin's people had studied them longer than most. If a situation arose where sorcery had to take a hand, certainly it made sense to leave it to the thin spellcaster. Norrec and Sadun would be there to guard him from other assaults.
This is old and powerful. Our predecessors may not have been so fortunate as first believed. We may find some treasures yet.
And possibly more. Norrec's grip on the sword tightened to the point that his knuckles whitened. He wanted gold, but he also wanted to live to spend it.
It looks as dark as the grave in there.
Norrec said nothing. Now a few steps ahead of both his comrades, he became the first to actually reach the chamber itself. Despite the dangers that might lurk within, he almost felt drawn to it, as if something inside called to him. A blinding brilliance overwhelmed the trio.
By the gods, I cannot see!
Give it a moment. It will pass.
And so it did. But as his eyes adjusted, Norrec Vizharan had at last beheld a sight so remarkable that he had to blink twice to make certain it was not a figment of his desires. The walls were covered in intricate, jeweled patterns in which even he could sense the magic. Precious stones of every type and hue abundant in each pattern, blanketing the chamber in an astonishing display of reflected and refracted colors. In addition, below those magical symbols, and no less eye-catching, were the very treasures for which the trio had come. Mounds of gold, mounds of silver, mounds of jewels. They added to the overall glitter, making the chamber brighter than day. Each time either fighter shifted his torch, the lighting further altered the appearance of the room, adding new dimensions equally as startling as the last. Yet, as breathtaking as all this looked, one shocking sight dampened Norrec's enthusiasm greatly. Strewn across the floor as far as he could see were the many mangled and decaying forms of those who had preceded him and his friends to this foreboding place.
Must have been some battle here.
These men did not all die at the same time.
Fauztin, do you care to explain?
I mean, Sadun. That some of them have clearly been dead for longer, even centuries. This one near your feet is one of the newest. Some of those over there are bones.
Either way, from the looks of it, they all died pretty nasty.
So, what killed them? Here! Look! Over there! I think they killed each other.
You must be mistaken. The one warrior is clearly much older than the other.
So Norrec would have supposed, if not for the blade thrust into the other corpse's torso. Still, the deaths of two men long, long ago had little bearing on present circumstances.
Fauztin, do you even sense anything? You suppose there's some kind of trap here?
There are too many conflicting forces in here, Norrec. I cannot get no actual sense of what to seek. I sense nothing directly dangerous yet.
So, do we leave all of this? Leave all our dreams? Or, instead, we take a little risk and gather ourselves an empire's worth of coin?
Norrec and the sorcerer exchanged glances. Neither could see any reason not to continue, especially with so many enticements before them. The veteran warrior finally settled the matter by taking a few steps further into the master chamber. When no great bolt of lightning nor demonic creature struck him down, Sadun and the Vizharan quickly followed suit.
11, 12. There must be a couple dozen, at least. And that's not counting the ones in little pieces.
You've already convinced me, Sadun. Just shut your mouth, or I'll shut it for you.
And then something else tore his thoughts from those questions. The sudden realization that beyond the treasure, at the very end of the chamber, a dais stood atop a naturally formed set of steps. More important, atop that dais lay mortal remains, still clad in armor.
Fauztin, at the end of the chamber. What do you make of that?
Faustin's only reply was to purse his thin lips and carefully make his way toward the platform. Norrec followed close behind.
It would explain so much. It would explain so many conflicting signatures and so many signs of power.
I don't follow. What are you talking about?
Come closer and see for yourself.
Norrec did just that. The sense of ease that had earlier filled him now amplified as the veteran peered at the macabre display atop the platform.
Do you see it?
Not certain what exactly he meant, Norrec squinted. Other than the fact that the armor itself seemed colored an unsettling yet familiar shade of red, he could see nothing that would have...
No head. The body on the dais has no head.
Yes, it is exactly as described.
Faustin's voice trailed off as he continued to stare.
But what?
Nothing, I suppose. Perhaps just being so near to him unsettles my nerves more than I'd like to admit.
So, who is he? Some prince?
By heavens! No! Do you not see? This is Lost Tomb of Bartok, Lord of Demons, Master of Dark Sorcery.
The Warlord of Blood.
The words escaped Norrec as little more than a gasp. He knew very well the tales of Bartok, who had risen among the ranks of sorcerers, only to later turn to the darkness, to the demons. Now the redness of the armor made perfect and horrible sense. It was the color of human blood. In his madness, Bartok, who even the demons who had first seduced him had eventually come to fear, had bathed himself before each battle in the blood of previously fallen foes. His armor, once brilliant gold, had become forever stained by his sinful acts. He had razed cities to the ground, committed atrocities unbounded, and would have continued on forever, so the stories went, if not for the desperate acts of his own brother, Horazon, and other Vizharan sorcerers who had used what knowledge they retained of the ancient, more natural magics to defeat the fiend. Bartok and his demon hosts had been slaughtered just short of victory, the warlord himself decapitated, just in the midst of casting a dire counterspell. Still, untrusting of his brother's vast power even in death, Horazon had commanded that Bartok's body forever be hidden from the sight of men. Why they had not simply burned it, Norrec did not know, but certainly he would have tried. Regardless, rumors had arisen shortly thereafter of places where the Warlord of Blood had been laid to rest. Many had sought out his tomb, especially those of the black arts interested in possible lingering magic, but no one had ever claimed to truly find it. The Vizharan likely knew more detail than Norrec, but the veteran fighter understood all too well that they had what they had found. Legend had it that for a time Bartok had lived among Norrec's own people, that perhaps some of those with whom the soldier had grown up had been, in fact, descendants of the monstrous despot's followers. Yes, Norrec knew very well the legacy of the warlord.
Fauztin, we're leaving this place.
But surely, my friend.
We're leaving.
The cowled figure studied Norrec's eyes, then nodded.
Perhaps you are right.
Something near the shadowed mouth of the chamber caught his attention. Something that moved, and that was not Sadun Tryst. The third member of the party presently engaged himself in trying to fill a sack with every manner of jewel he could find.
Sadun! Drop the sack, quick!
The thing near the entrance shuffled forward.
Are you mad? This is all we've dreamed about!
A clatter of movement caught Norrec's attention. A clatter of movement from more than one direction. He swallowed as the original figure moved better into view.
Sadun, look to your back!
Now, at last, he had his partner's attention. The wiry soldier dropped his sack instantly, whirling about and pulling his blade free. However, when he saw what both Norrec and Fauztin already faced, Sadun Tryst's countenance turned as pale as bone. One by one they began to rise, from corpse to skeleton. Those who had been preceded the trio to this tomb. Now Norrec understood why no one had ever left alive, and why he and his friends might soon be added to the grisly ranks.
Kosorak!
One of the skeletons nearest to the sorcerer vanished in a burst of orange flame. Fauztin pointed a finger at another, a half-clad ghoul with some traces of his former face still remaining. The Vizharan repeated the word of power.
My spell!
Watch it!
Norrec deflected the blow, then thrust. Unfortunately, his attack did nothing, the blade simply passing through the ribcage. In desperation, he kicked at his horrific foe, sending the skeleton crashing into another of the shambling undead.
Fauztin! Can you do anything?
I am trying a different spell.
Again, the Vizharan called out a word. This time, the two creatures battling with Sadun froze in place. Not one to miss such an opportunity. Tryst swung at the pair with all his might. Both ghouls shattered into countless pieces, their entire top half scattered on the stone floor.
Your powers, are they back?
They never left me. I fear I only have one chance to use each spell, and most still remain, taking much time to cast.
Norrec had no chance to comment on the terrible news, for his own situation had grown even more desperate. He traded quick strikes with the first one, then two of the encroaching ranks of undead. The ghouls seemed slow in reaction, for which he gave some thanks, but numbers and perseverance would eventually pay off for these ghastly guardians of the warlord's tomb. Those who had planned this last trap had planned well, for each party that entered added to the ranks that would attack the next. Norrec could imagine where the first undead had come from. He had remarked to his friends early on that although the three had come across sprung traps and dead creatures, no bodies had been found until the skull with a spike in its head. The first party to discover Bartok's tomb surely had lost some of its members on the trek inside, never knowing that those dead comrades would become the survivor's greatest nightmare. And so, with each new group, the ranks of guardians had grown, with Norrec, Sadun, and Fauztin now set to be added. One of the mummified corpses cut at Norrec's left arm. The veteran used the torch in his other hand to ignite the dried flesh, turning the zombie into a walking inferno. Risking his foot, Norrec kicked the fiery creature into its comrade.
Norrec! Fauztin! They're coming at me from everywhere!
Neither could help him, though. Both as harried. The mage beat off one skeleton with his staff, but two more quickly filled in the space left. The creatures had begun to move with more fluidity and greater swiftness. Soon, no advantage whatsoever would remain for Norrec and his friends. Separating him from Fauztin, three ghoulish warriors pressed Norrec Vizharan up the steps and finally against the dais. The bones of the Warlord of Blood rattled in their armor, but much to the hard-pressed veteran's relief, Bartok did not rise to command this infernal army. A flash of smoke alerted him to the fact that the sorcerer had managed to deal with yet another of the undead, but Norrec knew that Fauztin could not handle all of them. So far, neither of the fighters had managed much more than a momentary stalemate. Without flesh for their bloods to penetrate, without vital organs that could be skewered, knives and swords meant nothing. The thought of one day rising as one of these and moving to slay the next hapless intruder sent a shiver down Norrec's spine. He moved along the side of the dais as best as he could, trying to find some path by which to escape. To his shame, Norrec knew that he would have happily abandoned his comrades if an opening of freedom had abruptly materialized. His strength flagged. A blade caught him in the thigh. The pain not only made him cry out, but caused Norrec to lose his grip on his sword. The weapon clattered down the steps, disappearing behind the encroaching ghouls. His leg nearly buckling, Norrec waved the torch at the oncoming attackers with one hand, while his other sought some hold on the platform. However, instead of stone, his grasping fingers took hold of cold metal that offered no support whatsoever. His wounded leg finally gave out. Norrec slipped to one knee, pulling the metallic object he had accidentally grabbed with him. The torch flew away. A sea of grotesque faces filled the warrior's horrified view as Norrec attempted to right himself. The desperate treasure hunter raised the hand with which he had tried to garner some hold, as if by silently beseeching the undead for mercy he could forestall the inevitable. Only at the last did he realize that the hand he had raised now had somehow become clad in metal. A gauntlet. The very same gauntlet that he earlier had seen on the skeleton of Bartok. Even as this startling discovery registered in his mind, a word that Norrec did not understand ripped forth from his mouth. Echoing throughout the chamber, the jeweled patterns in the walls flared brighter, and the unearthly foes of the trio froze in place. Another word, this one even less intelligible, burst free from the stunned war veteran. The patterns of power grew blinding, burning and exploding. A fearsome wave of pure energy tore through the chamber, coursing over the undead. Shards flew everywhere, forcing Norrec to fold himself into as small as a bundle as possible. He prayed that the end would be relatively quick and painless. The magic consumed the undead where they stood. Bones and dried flesh burned as readily as oil tinder. Their weapons melted, creating piles of slag and ash. Yet it did not touch any of the party.
What's happening?
The Afrona moved with acute precision, sweeping over the tomb's guardians, but nothing else. As their numbers dwindled, so too did the intensity of the force, until at last neither remained. The chamber became plunged into near darkness, the only illumination now the two torches and the little bit of light reflected by the many ruined stones. Norrec gasped at the devastating results, wondering what he had just wrought and whether somehow it heralded an even more terrible situation. He then stared down at the gauntlet, afraid to leave it on, but equally fearful of what might happen if he tried to remove it.
They have been devoured.
But how?
How indeed. Norrec flexed his gloved fingers. The metal almost felt like a second skin. Far more comfortable than he could have thought possible. Some of the fear faded as the possibilities of what else he might be able to do became more obvious.
Norrec? When did you put that on?
A shadow loomed over his hand. He looked up to see the sorcerer eyeing him in concern.
Norrec, my friend, perhaps you should take off that glove.
What does the sorcerer want? No, he wants the glove for himself.
Norrec, listen to me. It is vital right now that you take the gauntlet off. We shall put it back on the platform.
What is it? What's wrong with him, Fauztin?
Norrec became convinced that he had been right the first time. The sorcerer wanted its glove.
Sadun, ready your blade. We may have to...
My blade. You want me to use it on Norrec?
Something within the older fighter took control. Norrec watched as if from a distance as the gauntleted hand darted out and caught the Vizharan by the throat.
Sadun, his wrist! Cut that is...
Out of the corner of his eye, Norrec saw his other companion hesitate, then raise his weapon to attack. A fury, such as he had never experienced, consumed the veteran. The world grew to a bloody red, then turned to utter blackness. And in that blackness, Norrec Vizharan heard screams.